Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are going to discuss the chapter Laws of Motion from class 11 and we'll discuss some tricky concepts from it so that it helps you out. So the first one in that is a system of blocks. It's actually a very common question in NEET. They give a system of 3 blocks and they say the force applied on one block and they ask the contact force between block 2 and block 3 or block 1 and block 2. So there's a pretty easy way of solving such questions. So you need to follow a standard set of steps. So the first step in this is to find the acceleration of the system. Now by system I refer to the system of these 3 blocks, and we can find the acceleration of the system by dividing the force acting on the system by the mass of the system itself, which is equal to the sum of the masses of the 3 blocks. So mass of the system is equal to m1 plus m2 plus m3. After finding acceleration of the system, suppose the question was to find the contact force between block 2 and block 3. Now consider block 3 as a separate entity. This is block 3. Now since this is the acceleration of the system, it implies that every block in this system will be moving with that same acceleration. So block 3 would be moving under this acceleration as well. So what is the force acting on block 3 that could provide it this acceleration? So by observing a bit, you would understand that the only force acting on block 3 is the contact force between block 2 and block 3, which we denote as F23, and this is the only force possibly providing acceleration to block 3 so that it can move. So we can write an equation that F23 is equal to m3 into acceleration of the system. Now the question was to find F23. Since we know m3 as given in the question and we found acceleration of the system, we can easily find contact force between block 2 and block 3. To find the contact force between block 1 and block 2, we need to consider block 2 and block 3 as one unit, like as one block itself. We can imagine it like this. There is one block 1 and together there is one block 2 and 3 system. In this case, suppose this whole body also moves with the acceleration of the system. The only force acting on it is a contact force between block 1 and block 2, which is F12. In this case, F12 can be equated to m2 plus m3 whole into acceleration of the system. So this is the contact force between block 1 and block 2. So it's pretty easy to find the contact forces, and now we'll apply this in a numerical. So in this numerical, it's given that the mass of block 1 is 5 kg, the mass of block 2 is 3 kg, and the mass of block 3 is 2 kg. The force acting is equal to 10 newtons. So they're asking to find the contact force between block 1 and 2 and between block 2 and 3, just as I said. So first let's find the acceleration of the system. The acceleration of the system in this case is equal to force acting on system, that is 10 Newton, divided by mass of the system, which is 5 plus 3 plus 2 kilos, which turns out to be 1 meter per second square. Now they are asking to find the contact force between block 1 and block 2, but let me do block 2 and block 3 first because it's relatively easier. So as we saw before, F23 will be equal to m3 into A system, which is equal to 2 kg into 1 meter per second square, which is equal to 2 Newton. And F12 is equal to m2 plus m3 into A system, which is equal to 3 plus 2 into 1, which is equal to 5 Newton. So the contact force between block 1 and block 2 is 5 Newton, and between block 2 and block 3 is 2 Newton. If you didn't understand this concept, then there's a pretty intuitive way of understanding this. Suppose here force of 10 Newton is acting and the acceleration system is 1 meter per second square. Since this body is of 5 kilos, it would consume a force of 5 Newton. I get that by F is equal to ma, which is equal to 5 into 1, which is equal to 5 Newton. So this body consumes an amount of 5 Newton and it transmits the rest which is there with it 5 Newton. Of these 5 Newtons, since this body is of 3 kilo, it will consume a force of about 3 into 1 which is equal to 3 Newton and transmits the remaining force, that is 2 Newton, which acts on block 3. This is not physics actually, but it's a pretty intuitive way to understand this concept very easily, and you can even use it in questions. It will never wrong you. And this was about a system of blocks. Hope you guys understood this, and next we'll move on to the concept of pseudo force. Now coming to the concept of pseudo force, it's quite a confusing concept, and initially even I had a misconception with regard to this concept. I used to think that the pseudo force needs to be applied in the ground frame of reference to understand what's happening inside the elevator. But then my friends explained me that the ground frame is approximately an inertial frame because it's earth and it's almost not accelerating, can consider. But it is the elevator which is a non-inertial frame, and pseudo force needs to be applied to a non-inertial frame so that the observer inside the elevator gets to know what actually is happening in the real world, and what he feels is contrary to what actually happens because the elevator is stationary with respect to him. That's the concept of pseudo force. Now let's consider the case of an elevator which is either accelerating downwards or decelerating upwards. In such case, the acceleration of the elevator would be in the downward direction, but a pseudo force needs to be applied in the upward direction. Similarly, in case of this elevator that's either accelerating upward or decelerating downward, the acceleration of elevator is in the upward direction, but the pseudo force needs to be applied in the downward direction. Now, if this concept of pseudo force is not really intuitive to you, then imagine yourself going down in an elevator and suddenly the lift stops because of a power cut. In such a case, since you're initially moving down inside this elevator, you had a velocity in this direction, and the value of this velocity suddenly dropped to 0. That means there was an acceleration in the opposite direction. So if pseudo force were really existing, then you would feel a force in the downward direction. And this is a real life experience. If you get stuck in an elevator, like it gives you a sudden jerk and you feel like you're being pulled down. So this is how we understand the concept of pseudo force in real life, that it actually exists and the person inside the elevator would actually feel this acceleration. But to understand this, he needs to observe himself from the ground frame of reference, and so for the sake of convenience, the concept of pseudo force has been introduced. So hope you guys understood the concept of pseudo force, and this was all about the video on laws of motion. We'll come back with more videos. Till then, share the content, enjoy the videos, and study well. Thank you so much. Please do like and share the video and subscribe to our channel.